I, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I had an experience once that around. I actually don't remember whether it was just before I woke up or just after, but it was very close to that same time. And I was staying in a caravan, our caravan in down in Melbourne, which is a long way away. It's over 1,000 kilometres away from here. But anyway, and my wife was looking after her sister who was dying of breast cancer at the time, and I was asleep in this caravan, and as I was waking up, I was hearing the sound of the surf. Oh, and it just really captivated me. It was so beautiful, the sound of waves coming in, and it was just that constant background noise that a surf makes. It was beautiful. And as I woke up, I realised I couldn't possibly be hearing the sound of the surf because I was way too far away from the coast. What I was actually hearing was the sound of the traffic of a morning getting going on an expressway about a kilometre away.
Oh,
And when I was hearing the sound of the surf, it was so beautiful. And when I was hearing the sound of those fucking cars, it was terrible. Yeah, just amazing how we react to what we imagine, just create.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
crazy
Well,
stuff.
just yeah, absolutely. It's like the brain. This just a few minutes ago, I was making scrambled eggs and had them in a metal bowl, scrambling it, and by mistake, I hit the metal, and then for a tiny moment, forgot I'm scrambling eggs, and I thought, oh, that's nice. And then I kind of snapped whatever out of it. I thought I just hit the metal. But the association was I had just come back from yoga and she was using these bowls
Yes.
and, the vibration of the bowls. And,
Yeah.
you know, I thought it was this wonderful experience. But it's like as soon as my mind recognized that it's just a metal bowl,
Yeah, yeah.
mixing bowl, it lost its
It took the magic out of it.
impact. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But it
yeah,
was, to my ears, it was the same sound.
yeah, yeah. And you can extrapolate this too all day, every day, our experience of the world.
Yeah.
It's so
And the judgments,
obvious.
like, so this, when this same sound comes in this situation from the yoga teacher who's using her bowls who are from India, like the whole story, it's like you're lulled into it. But the metal,
Yeah. Well,
as soon as my mind went to this is just a metal bowl,
mm.
you're making scrambled eggs.
So that
Yeah,
the the relevance of this and the impact of it, the actual direct experience of how we create the world is so obvious when this happens, right? And
yeah.
and and just to add to it, you can go to not only do you create the world as a perception, but it
Mhm.
extends to creating the world in its physicality as well. Now, don't worry about that one. That's not that'll be experienced one day, but it's just there is no separation between the perception of what we take to be actual and the actual itself. Just leave it as a woo-woo thing until it happens. But the only reason I mention it is that it drops a seed in there, opens up the possibility of an actual experience of how this occurs.
Yeah,
There is no explanation. You can, if you want, start studying quantum physics and maybe get a bit of an idea from there, but don't bother unless you're really interested. But essentially, it's way more than just an individual little experience. It is something that is happening all the time.
yeah. The mind just immediately switched on and takes it on as.
Well,
I know what
the
this
other way
is.
around. The mind produces it first, and then
Oh,
reacts to it. See, in one way, a minimal way, where you can say, well, the mind is just reinterpreting what comes in through experience.
yeah.
But at a much more profound level, the mind is creating the whole thing, including itself. So that so that that it becomes totally woo-wooish when you yeah. But just enjoy the now. Here's the thing: enjoy the recognition of it, but be very careful about what will come habitually, which is uh, narration that says, "Oh, I just enjoyed that," or "I'm experiencing the wonder of it." Yeah.
That happens so fast.
Yes. And it snaps you out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Not that it's appropriate to live in it all the time. I mean, you wouldn't go very far or do very much if that were the case. But frequent experiences, daily frequent experiences will happen.
I think, the only thing I notice is how quickly I judged something as a better or worse experience. Even though, if you just looked at the sound,
Yes,
it's the same sound, that the experience of the sound in that moment was the same.
yes.
But
And the sound itself is irrelevant. Yeah,
it's
it's
irrelevant.
your
But
relationship to it. That's right.
the experience of the sound before the before my mind decided what it was.
Yeah, yeah. But there's no before and there's no after. See,
Oh,
so also
oh,
you've got that thing where you could say the mind put it there, and then the next experience was the mind responding to it. And then there was the next experience of the mind responding to the response to it. So there's no beginning or end to that either.
no, it's just happening.
Hmm.
It's hard to tell what's coming before, during, or after.
Hmm. And if you imagine it all there all the time, which isn't the time, don't so that
No,
even just saying those words kind of produces uh, an inaccurate thing to happen. So yeah, it's all out of time. So again, that the illusion of continuity. So when you're hearing the sound, your whole being screams that there's continuity, that there is the beginning of the sound and it has length, that it starts and continues before it ends, and it ends with a particular flavor, like fading out gently and etc.
yeah,
Yeah,
except that when you're just hearing the sound or experiencing the sound in that moment, there's no sense of time.
that's right. Yeah, it's only a case of when I think about the sound, if
It's
I
just when I
remember
think
the
about it.
sound, I remember it a sequence. I remember it starting, I remember it continuing, I remember it ending.
Yeah,
But
and
when
then
you're
there's a story.
experiencing it, you don't know about where it is That's that. So there is literally um, each moment, only if compared to the previous moment, say at the end of the sound as it fades out, each instant there's a difference. So even when we start to describe difference,
Yeah.
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 So it's the mind that takes this instant and compares it to the memory of a previous instant, and then we get an experience called fading out of sound.
Yeah. And the whole, like, even when I think of it, all these layers are coming up, and then the comparisons and the going back, and when did I experience that? It's like it really kind of takes away from.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to stop that stuff. We don't want it to not happen. We don't want to experience it as a disconnected series of now,
No,
but,
no,
but just the recognition that that's a mind product is where the value is, and that the mind, it doesn't exist either. So let's just call it
no,
an objective happening.
no. But I really thought nothing of it when it happened. It was just, I didn't think anything of it. It just after, and it's, and as I say this, it's so hard to not make something of
Hmm.
something that probably happens all the time, and you may or may not notice it.
Well,
But it,
again, there's nothing to do, is there? It
no,
it will or will not reveal itself. We get to the point where we can't talk about it even.
yeah, just it's funny how the little things can be so extraordinary, when we're just there. I think that's probably why this is shared. And even when I shared it, I wasn't
Hmm.
thinking anything of it.
See, my mind just hooked into that word extraordinary, and here we are.
Right?
Everything we talk about is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And how amazingly limited is ordinary. Well, when then ordinary becomes the wrong word, the
Yeah.
let's say common. Uh,
Little things of everyday life when you wait and when you can see it.
mm,
And even you say that when I say that, it's not something that there's nothing that's makes anything happen. It's just feels just like a tiny opening.
mm.
It's just a moment of curiosity, or just a moment of, oh, that's all it was. Oh, but it still warms up my heart. It still makes me feel grateful.
Yeah, it feels a bit like an episode of Star Trek or something to me. Like we've landed on an alien planet and we're just agog at everything.
The wonder, it's the
Mm.
wonder. That's yeah, a moment when it feels like you're in wonder. You have this, yeah, and there's nothing that, no effort of trying to make anything happen. Just scrambling my eggs.
Yep.
So yeah, anyway.
How are you, Alexi?
I'm doing okay. I just came back from a walk with my dog by the lake. It was feel more peaceful. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, yeah. I'm full of anticipation about getting this off in a couple of hours.
Oh, nice. Was it a cut or you broke something?
Oh, I had a joint replacement in one of my fingers
Oh, okay.
as a result of arthritis. So put a tiny little plastic joint in and took away all of the bone growth that was there a week ago, or 6 days ago, actually. Yeah. You're muted, Marius.
I was speaking to my wife.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Interesting how the instant assumption was that you were talking to us, but you'd forgotten to unmute. Yeah, a whole story in a flash. Tunk. Mm. Mm. How are you, Paul? I never think to ask you how you are. I just always assume that you're well and everything's wonderful for you.
Am I the only Paul in here? Yeah. I'm fine.
At the moment.
I'm yeah. I have to always check. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Just chilling out. Did some work this morning, just taking it easy this afternoon. Afternoon for me, I guess it's still early for you.
Yeah. It was just 7:21 here, AM.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a great way to start the day.
Hmm.
Oh, did you take part in the survey?
I don't know of a survey. What one?
Oh, they posted it over on Unleash. A guy up in I think it's in Utah. Is doing a survey with, you know, request. It was brought to the guides pretty much. That he's doing a survey or he's doing a research paper,
Yeah,
be more specific
I
on the
think the
non-dual stuff. His name's Jacob. I talked with him the other day.
yeah. Was
Think,
that the same one he was asking for people with a Buddhist background?
uh, I don't remember the post. Yeah, it may have said something about
Yeah.
Buddhist background or just non-dual in general.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think if it's the one I saw, I ruled myself out because it wasn't my background. But,
Okay. Well,
hmm.
I don't think it, judging from the conversation I had with him, I felt like he was just entered.
Oh, okay. Well, I would
It,
I would go though into those things if it was appropriate. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm not sure what Buddhist background has a lot to do with it anyway, other than a lot of doctrine. I mean,
Hmm. It was a while ago when I saw it. It was well, probably a month ago or something. So I forget the exact
yeah,
details, but I do remember
that's
ruling myself out. Yeah.
yeah. You had to just fill out a questionnaire, and then there was a consent form. Um, and then he gives you a Zoom date. Uh, it was interesting. He's a young guy.
Hmm.
I don't know what kind of paper he's doing. I supposedly we'll see it.
Yeah.
It should be something good to post in the Unleash form or something.
Well, the more of those things happen, the better. The more we get it into the spotlight of science, the better it is, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, half the world doesn't even know this stuff exists, let alone get involved in it.
True.
But it will change really fast now. I'm really excited about the artificial intelligence thing, um, and I'm up to version 4. I'm working on probably version 5 at the moment, and what I did last night, it just came to me to ask the artificial intelligent bot itself how I can improve its results. And it gave me a whole lot of things that I can add into the instructions of it. So I'm quite excited to see what happens when I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like refining your search parameters
Yeah.
with Google or most of the search engines.
Yeah. But ask the search engine itself how you can do it better.
Oh yeah, that isn't it. It is an interesting angle. I like to Google that and see what it says. I haven't really talked to what are you talking to? I don't know much about it other than I've heard of Chat GPT.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was ChatGPT that I used, and I and
Okay.
I, and I fed it as a knowledge base. I fed it the PDF of my website, which is reasonably comprehensive. But it's the instructions. It's not the actual. I mean, there's a whole lot of other stuff I could add to the knowledge base, but a lot of it would just be repetitive, and so I'm not at the point of doing that at the moment. Um, I'm still waiting for some responses from some other people to get the okay to use their information as a knowledge base. But really, it's the instructions to it that I'm concentrating on at the moment. Um, so you haven't seen it? Have you haven't seen that? I'll 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 put I'll put it in the chat the a link to it and you can play with it. Um,
Okay. Cool. That there's some big ruckus going on with the big tech firms that China just came out with some advanced
yep, deep sea.
chat called Seek or something.
Yeah, deep
And
sea.
they built it for like about 10 or 20 million dollars and it's supposedly outshining everything we have. They're all upset about it and everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. It made a big impact on the share market because Nvidia was going through the roof with their chips that they were making for ChatGPT. And typically, the way the Americans do things is they just throw more power into everything. So it was like a mini miner with a semi-trailer engine in it. They just go bigger and bigger and bigger, harder and harder and harder. Um, and so it was costing them a fortune to train the artificial intelligence. Even the power consumed by the computers and the chips was just through the roof. Um,
Yeah, I heard that.
like Amazon, and they were talking about building their own nuclear power plants to run the things. And then Chinese went and did it with really cheap chips that were made, like they were made really the size of dinner plates. Some of these chips that they made that they were using, and I think the figure I heard was something like $6 million that they used compared to
Okay.
hundreds of millions of dollars for the Chat GDP one, and it's actually more efficient and faster. It
Yeah.
doesn't require that same kind of computing in order to run and so on. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
upset the whole world, and the stock value of Nvidia dropped like crazy because all of a sudden they're not needed anymore. They're kind of working their way back again, but yeah, really interesting. A
Yeah.
lateral thinking kind of Chinese. You've got to give it to them. They're clever people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It'll be
then
interesting.
and then they gave it to the world. They open sourced the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens when all this stuff combines with that quantum computer. Google's
Yeah.
good. That's that's almost a little scary. That's going to be a
Yeah.
science fiction movie.
We do live in interesting times for a whole lot of reasons, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that I'll put the link in the chat there. So feel free
Okay,
and do give it a real hard time and give me feedback on it if you see anything that could be improved.
I sure will. Okay, got it.
And it's really interesting. Some of the people at Liberation Unleashed have been looking at it, and then all of a sudden these arguments pop up about whether it will replace guides, and nobody's talking about the guides actually using it as an additional help. All the
Hmm.
arguments seem to jump straight into the idea of, well, maybe we won't need guides anymore or whatever. Of course, it's ridiculous to think about it like that.
Somehow I don't think they could. I don't know unless it gets down to a question of what is intuition, and is that surely purely human, or can that be artificially generated? Because I think a lot of the guiding is intuitive and responsive. So
Well,
I don't know.
how much of guiding is let's say influenced by the connection between the seeker and the guide?
Right.
And even if that connection is totally imagined, it's still visceral in the response that's there. So the trust and the implied mm, power imbalance comes to mind as a way, but it's not really what I mean. But the implied that the guide knows something I don't, etc., etc. The nuances in that are just infinite that exists there. So maybe that would be the case if the seeker thinks that the AI is a person, but if the
That's an
seeker
interesting
knows that
turn.
it's AI, it would be, yeah.
Well, the thing that comes up for me is when you look at a post, specifically a written post or word LU, a variety of responses can pop up. Is it going to entertain a variety of responses, or is it going to have a rather one-directional response? Follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Well, I think maybe it's nature of, well, it was Chat GDP I used because the man who showed me how to do it was using that. And even though I went and looked at DeepSeek, I couldn't work out how to do it in that. So I did it in Chat GDP. Um, but part of the implicit intention of it, the way it's been built, is for it to make it look like human. So it gives you very human kind of responses. So if you just look at the way what it returns, it could be quite difficult to say that this is just a machine response. It
Yeah, it
appears.
would be impossible to know if it had considered alternative responses.
Oh, it does. It will. Although I'm getting more and more specific with the instructions I'm giving it, which kind of
Okay.
narrows down those kind of things. So I'm telling it to not completely use the knowledge base, but to use the knowledge base essentially, but allowing it to go out and get more stuff to make the responses nuanced. Um, so that's an interesting one. Um,
Here's an experiment, Vince. You put two guides on LU that are actually AIs and see how long it takes to wake someone up, and then you could have 50 AIs going and learning from each other and waking people up quicker and quicker. I wonder would that work?
yeah, yeah. Well, the interesting thing that whether people realise it or not, but that the fear that is often expressed about artificial intelligence is that when it reaches the point where it can teach itself to be better rather than just be trained by a person, at that point it could get superhumanly intelligent, and that it might get so intelligent that it sees us as stupid and just decides that we're irrelevant to everything and wipe us out. That's, of course, the basis of the fear that people have about it. Yeah. I put Marius, I put Cormac's response into it last night just to see what it would come up with and how it responded. Uh, and it was quite interesting, the what it came back with. You know, quite a lot of stuff there. So I would see it as a legitimate aid to a guide, to just uh, potentially reveal stuff that hasn't occurred to them as a way, or a perspective that hasn't occurred to a guide, uh, that may be or may not be relevant, um, to come back with.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I also think it's interesting what Paul said about the intuition part, because if the guide kind of has an idea where one wants to go with the next response, but kind of sets one's intuition aside and picks from whatever the chatbot is picking up, then it
Well,
kind of,
that would be a ridiculous limitation, I imagine.
yeah.
Mm.
But I'm not against it. I'm just one the guide would have to be mindful as well.
Oh, absolutely, for sure, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the interesting thing with Liberation Unleashed is that what the guide has to work on are words written on the page, and that lends itself perfectly to the AI because that's all it's got is words. And so when we talk about intuition, we go, well, what is the intuition? So when, for example, I am reading somebody's responses to the final questions at Liberation Unleashed, uh, obviously we look at the words that are used, but of course the nature of this stuff is that we have to use words as almost literally as a metaphor, because we don't have words to relate to this stuff. So when I'm looking at those final questions or the answers to those final questions, I'm really actively looking for the tone. I'm looking for the humor. I'm looking for the lightness. I'm looking for the gratitude. Those kind of things. Now, do we now? people may become aware of those or may be responding to those things without really being aware of the fact that they're responding to that, then would you call that intuition? I guess you would, because it's a subconscious kind of thing that's going on. They're reading the words, but they're picking up on the tone of it. Whereas for me, it's a much more conscious thing when I do it. It's just something that happened. I worked out that reveals more than the actual words reveal. Well, the AI, I'm training it to do that. I'm training it. One question I asked it, and this is a great one, really hound it with questions about itself and watch what comes up. And one of the questions I asked it is, can you feel a visceral experience? And it said, no, of course not. But I can tell if somebody's having a visceral experience by the words that are used. And then it went and gave me all these examples and explained how, if the words relate to, I mean, if we were technically, we would say if more verbs are used than adjectives. You know, adjectives describe, so they're intellectual, whereas verbs describe experience, and so on. So it actually said it could recognize when the person's having a visceral experience, even though it can't experience that itself, which is exactly what we do as guides.
That's
You
pretty
also
interesting.
but you also pick up on body language, on, the pause,
Yeah, you don't do that at LU though. You can't do that because you've only got written words on the forum to work with.
oh,
Bit different if you were doing a live face-to-face like we're doing now. Then body language comes into it, and therefore our intuition is much more active, I guess.
yeah, that I have a lot of resistance, where I'm at right now, to think that I would rely on AI. And it's only the need to connect, and even being here today, sharing with a group versus listening to a recording.
Yes,
It's a different experience.
absolutely. Yeah.
Being part of versus being someone watching. Let's say tomorrow someone's watching this. They're going to have an experience, but it's not the
Yeah,
same as
absolutely.
participating and putting yourself out there, saying things that come, allowing yourself to say things that come out of your mouth, however they come out.
Yep. Well,
Different
so
experience.
you get these questions that pop up. Well, I mean, I really enjoy science fiction stuff. If a certain kind of science fiction, and ones that involve robots and things like that are always really interesting, I find, because of the relationship thing. And so when you ask questions like, well, would it be possible to fall in love with a robot, knowing that it's a robot? I believe it is. You know, I can see people doing that. And then you think, geez, I love my dog. You know, how different is that? I mean, my dog, I interpret my dog wanting food as it expressing love to me. And all it does is sits there and looks at me, or puts its paw on me, or nuzzles up against me. And I'm going, isn't this affection? I love it. I love this affection. It's not affection. It wants food. But I interpret it, and I know that I'm interpreting it. And yet I still love my dog. So I could easily love a robot if it was programmed to give me the responses that got me feeling
Well, actually you can experience love without anything happening. So you could certainly project that onto this robot tells me everything I want to hear.
good. Yeah. Well, isn't that what we do with the whole world? We just project what we want to hear, what we want to feel, yeah. It's exciting. It's so interesting, this stuff. I just love it. I love it. Yeah.
Generating a lot of questions of what does it mean to be human?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you can just see the puffery involved, like the feeling that we're the top of some kind of chain is just what a ridiculous notion that is. Yeah.
I guess that, if there was a thing that allowed you to open up and to experience life deeply, to experience to yeah, life fully, it would have to feel similar to love.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Something that draws your awareness.
Yeah.
Makes you question everything.
Yep. Question everything without expecting an answer to anything.
Right.
We're boring you, Dennis.
No, no. Um,
I was getting bored.
I'm tired, but I'm tired because today it started last night. Just very angry, lots of anger and frustration, and I've kind of been sitting there all day just stewing with it. I'm kind of tired now because of it. Um,
So did you
mm,
value out of it?
Not really. Um, I don't know if I'm shutting and then it's creating the anger, or I'm angry and I'm layering on shoulds and shouldn'ts on top of it, which is keeping it going. Which is kind of creating the fed up with this way and things being that way and life being this way and
So you could make an assumption that we don't do anything without at least the promise of some kind of gain, some kind of advantage, some kind of value, and that feels okay to me. So let's go back and not be concerned at all about what your anger is about, but just consider the possibility that there was some value in its existence. What do you think you gained out of being angry? What was the point of it?
I feel like if I gained anything, it was my sense of I'm right and someone else is wrong.
Well, that could be enough. Yeah. And the fact that those thoughts turned up gives them more credibility than the thoughts we haven't come across yet. So, so then you can ask yourself, what was the value of feeling like you were right? Was it to get away from something else?
I'm trying to think now, maybe to justify me being able to change my behavior and do things differently for me.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's just go the value of justifying. That gets a bit heavy duty stuff, doesn't it? Because if I need to justify, it's because I feel, I don't know the right words, but you know what I mean.
I feel not seen, taken for granted.
Okay, that's enough. Don't just go into that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry about what might be present. Let's assume that that's something that you've been carrying with you all your life for a long time. That under certain circumstances you feel invisible, not substantial, not right, not okay, not, I don't know. I don't want to put words into your mouth.
It feels more like in my current family and my family situation now that that's kind of taken for granted. That's where the anger comes up. If I change things, you kind of know all about it.
Is somebody taking you for granted? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah. Now
Yeah.
my mind's coming in and saying to me, "Well, it's never outside. It's always you." That could be a bypass.
But something in the present has triggered that. It is always you, but something has triggered it. And something's triggered that old stuff in you. And for somebody else, it would not be an issue, but for you, it is an issue. Because,
There's a desire to sort of break free of everything.
so you feel a bit imprisoned.
Sort of a self-imprisonment.
Mm. Constrained. So do you feel an impulse to explode out? To be unfettered?
My mind was analyzing every move there for a minute. And it just feels like I can't make any moves. I'm out of moves. I was like, oh, I could leave. No, it's just going through all these ideas of what I could do, from mundane to spectacular, and it's all just
But yeah, so the ideas represent, they sit on top of an impulse. Can you get in touch with the experience of that impulse? It feels to me like a desire to expand to infinity.
feels like a desire to scream my head off.
I want to ask you something I've asked you before, Dennis, and that is, do you feel like your life is out of alignment somehow? Like you're doing or force yourself or your situation is forcing you to do something that doesn't feel right?
or that feels constricting.
I look at the double-edged sword. It's like I could. This is one way I want to answer it. It's like, your life, your career, your partner, your children, your house, everything is your sort of known comfort, but it's also your prison, depending on what way you look at it. You want it when you need it, but then you think sort of part of its own prison in my head.
Are you imprisoned in a character that you have to play within the family system?
I don't think I am now, as in for the last 20 odd years. I think before that, for the first 20, that statement rings through, but I've kind of stayed imprisoned anyway afterwards because that was the role. It's like there's a sense you can do anything you want. You're free. Nobody's keeping you here. Nobody's trapping you. Nobody's saying you can't do something if you don't want, if you want to do it. So it's like a self trap.
The prison door is open, but you still stay inside.
Yeah. Mm.
Do you see how, and I'm not saying this is what is going on, but do you see how thoughts about wanting something else, even though that something else isn't really clear, is kind of creating the illusion of a prison?
Yeah, because, I don't know what I want. So the mind fills in the blanks. It could be last week, it could be, oh, I want to win the lotto. The week before, it could be, I want something at work to happen. The week before that, I want my wife to be a certain way. Whatever. The mind fills in the blanks. But yeah, there is that sort of desire for something different and not being able to know what that is. And then feeling like I have no control anyway. This is ridiculous. That this is my life.
It sounds like the same kind of energy I felt when I was trapped in seeking. I just didn't want this. I want anything else but this. So I constantly was looking forward. I don't know if that is right for you, but get the same vibe.
I can remember feeling that kind of thing as well. And to extend the metaphor, it kind of feels like I never realised, but I've discovered that I was walking over a trapdoor in the floor. That when I look through that trapdoor, there's a whole world, a whole new world through that. And I never realised it. So if somebody were watching, it would still look like I was inside the prison. Cell. But that feeling of imprisonment, that's very much a contraction. Do you feel it as a contraction, Dennis? Almost like a wetsuit all over you, pulling in, pushing in, pulling in, holding in. I
The
don't know.
bo- no, yeah, the body's very light these days. I said that yesterday. I feel it mainly, if I do feel anything, it's just in the head, pressure. It's not anywhere else in the body. It's just a head pressure.
Okay.
Um, I was feeling into the anger there again, and it sort of reminded me of my dad's anger. Um,
What if it is your dad
actually,
and not just reminds you of it?
yeah, because I seen him yesterday, yesterday daytime. I was doing something, and I was chatting to him, and he was trying to get the top off a hose out the back, and he was effing and blind, and just no change. 75 years, no change. Anyway, so I don't know if that affected me. I didn't think it affected me, but
He was
I'm
a role
just
model
pissed
for a
off
long
with
time.
me.
Sorry.
I'm just like, it's to sum it up in a sentence. I'm just pissed off with me and my lot. Just me.
So what's the story that you're pissed off with you about?
Like everything my whole life and how I've got myself to this point in time now here with everything the way it is.
Yeah, but the story is about how it could be, eh? Or how it should be, or how it might be, or how, the story is about how it.
Yeah. Could be better, could be more, could be
Yeah,
different.
yeah. So investigate that story a little bit. Don't worry about reality. Don't worry about whether it's possible or not. Just what is that desire?
Yeah, it's back to that complete failure.
Which is the answer to Marius's question, eh?
What was the question?
I don't even remember my question.
I don't remember exactly what it was either. But yeah, it was that, yeah, something like that. So there's this idea. There's this idea of something absolutely beautiful. This peace and contentment and calmness and openness and unrestrained expression, unrestrained everything. There's this idea of your head exploding outwards into infinity.
Yeah, I want to lash out and be angry with everybody because what's underneath is because I'm a complete failure. And instead of feeling sad, I get angry.
Mm.
Failure compared to what? What does the opposite of that look like?
More successful, more financially successful, more well regarded in the community, just as somebody, you know.
So you want to be a someone.
I'm hearing that old boxing rhyme. I could have been someone, I could have been a contender.
The irony is that this behaviour is very much a someone self. But yeah, when you say, I get it, when you say a someone, you're talking about
Oh, I could wrap a whole story around it. I was born into these conditions. There's no way out. You're trapped. This is your lot.
You know, I know a lot of someones, but they don't really consider themselves someone. They just keep chasing the illusory feeling of being someone because it's impossible. There's no one there. It's just thought after thought after thought after thought. New story, new story.
Yeah, there are no someones out there. So what are you comparing yourself to?
My idea of a better self.
And I know you see that as an idea. Have you forgotten for a moment?
It feels like just like a way to express the feelings, but it's not necessary. I could just feel the feelings and the sensations in my chest and the sense of what I'm calling failure in the body.
Can you explain how failure is, or being a failure is felt in the body? Because I don't have access to that particular feeling.
It's, well, I could say it differently. It's sadness with a story.
Could it be that sadness, or even let's not call it anything, something is coming through, and because it feels uncomfortable, you don't want it to be there, and so you're trying to understand what it is, and you're slapping a label on it, and you're giving it a story, and then you're just trapped in fantasy land.
Yeah, you've just described everybody's day-to-day life. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, because it sometimes it feels like pressure. Yeah, and I don't want to slap labels on it and be reactive to it and just metaphorically slap people around with it and, bring it out into the world in a negative way. I've been kind of keeping to myself with it.
Just to share that the last 3 days, I've had a lot of sensations passing through that feels heavy, where I would previously had tried to figure out what it was about and how to get away from it. But I know that's all bullshit, so I don't. And I know that you know it's all bullshit, but you you forget, and then you entertain the stories.
Yeah, it gives thoughts a different quality, sort of a frustrating, angry quality. You think, oh, in the past I would have acted on these and had arguments and fights, but now I'm just sort of watching it all.
But it also seems like you're giving it meaning when there's no meaning necessarily there.
Yeah, I'm listening to the voice. The voice is very negative.
Would it be possible to just welcome the sensations that you're experiencing without judging them or wishing them away?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I'm wishing sensations away or trying to block anything.
Seems to me like you're in a really interesting halfway place where you're not lost in these things like you once would have been. You're aware of what's going on. At the same time, it's still going on. And that in itself possibly gives rise to some frustration about them and so on. It's worth appreciating that that anger is an expression of a lot of energy, and that energy wants some resolution. It's an automatic kind of intensity of moving you in a good direction, but you're still focused on a negative aspect, if you like, that non-achievement of something. And so consequently you miss out on appreciation of the fact that you're halfway up the stairs and you're getting there.
Yeah, I get that. So snap out of the story and just feel what's to be felt.
Yeah.
The
And it
story
would,
is like an old reaction to
yeah.
trying to control the energy, the feeling, the sensation, whatever it is.
Yeah. So if you just allowed that and really appreciated that you're aware of what's going on, or no, appreciated that what it means to be aware of what's going on. It means you got 1 foot outside the prison door. If you were totally in the prison, you wouldn't even be aware of what's going on.
And it's funny at the same time, and like I was saying about the body feels so much more relaxed, so much more heavier. I think as in a good heavy, you know, that relaxing heavy that you kind of
Mm,
feel, because if I relax anymore, I'll be on the ground. Um, I even stop breathing and just let everything collapse down.
mm.
The chest area is opened right up, upper chest into the lower neck, which was always tight. It's like, oh, what's going on here? Someone's taken the big strap of a belt off.
Yeah. And it's
The
interesting
vibrations.
that the remainder, this is really interesting, wonderful metaphor. The remainder is just in the head.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Isn't that
It
interesting?
feels like I'm waking up from the feet upwards.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I love it. So the last remaining prison guard, if you like,
Ahead.
is in the head. Yeah. And what's in the
Because
head?
I'm feeling the jaws vibrating sometimes, the lips going sometimes, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah. And maybe just the single last remaining thing that could be broken is that there's no need for answers. Just a realization, an acceptance of what is the last thing to be let go of. It's that need for answers that is maybe the final prison guard, that wanting to know about it, wanting to control it, and the whole thing rests on just an acceptance that it can't really be known why or how. It can be experienced what, but not why or how. No need for answers. And you might even experience it as a pop when it finally lets go.
Yeah, it feels like you're at that point now, Janice, where you've probably heard many people say the place where you just need to let go.
Where letting go happens.
Yeah.
It's a choiceless choice.
You can't do it, but it can happen.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to do it. And so when you said you can't do it, I'm like, oh, that's a relief.
Yeah. Phew, yeah. That's a letting go. Feel that. Feel what it feels like when you go, oh, that's a relief. Oh,
And my mind says, yeah, let's go to bed for a month.
yeah. The mind is frantically trying to figure out what channel it's on while the fingers are automatically on the remote going click.
Pick the red pill, Dennis.
Yeah.
I've taken all the pills.
Yeah. And the mind's busy saying, well, what if I can't find my mouth to put this pill in? You know, what if what if I drop it on the way up? You know, so, and the whole time it's already in your mouth, just dissolving.
Yeah, I feel like I just want to be, I feel like I am quiet now. And if I go back into my mind for a story to continue the conversation, I'm just picking back up the racket for the sake of hitting the ball.
Well, I'll repeat the metaphor that feels relevant to me here. The mind is really busy going, what channel do I need to get onto? Where's that? Where it is? Where is it? Netflix or is it Binge or is it Paramount? Where? What channel? What channel? What was the name of that program I was looking for? The mind's going to do all that shit. Let it do it. The hand is on the remote, and it knows what to do. It's doing it. It's already done it, in fact. You just allow the mind to do its own crazy shit. You're not going to stop it. Just pay no attention to it.
Yeah, right now I'm not, and it's quiet.
Hmm. Yeah, good one. Oh, feel the breath going in and out. Tammy, is any of this stuff relevant for you?
Oh, hi. No, you were just saying that Dennis was talking about the thoughts, when you were talking about the channels. I just started laughing because I feel like it was, I don't know when it was, but you're aware of the thoughts and you're sitting here and the thoughts are looking for something to do. And it's just, you have to laugh because some of the thoughts, they were just trying to pick up my old habits of what I should do. And it's just, of it, there's just no interest whatsoever. But the mind sure is trying to find something, flipping the channels. And I'm just like, nope, 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 just sitting here, this is what boredom is. But it's just trying so hard. Like, oh, do you want another coffee? You want to go get a coffee, maybe? Oh, oh, I mean, there's just nothing that interests me anymore. And it's like my only thing that it can possibly grab me, it knows is like coffee.
Yeah,
And I'm well aware of that, but I will indulge every now and then, but it's just no, there's nothing else. And
yeah,
like I've just been the last couple of days, you know, just going behind the thought and just feeling like the burning and the gut in the chest and just sitting there in that. And it just kind of feels really nice, actually.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah,
Way. But then, the thoughts come in and try to manage that too and saying, oh, this is really good.
yeah, yeah.
Or, this is like, is it good or is it bad? I don't know. But I just know that there's no thought there until that happens. So I'm just like, okay, this is. And then I hear Pernella, can you be in a body? That feels like. And that just makes me smile because it's like, it's okay to have those kind of thoughts coming through. That just makes me laugh, like, hearing the echoes of that. And it's just kind of funny.
Good stuff.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so good or bad, whatever that saying is, good or bad, hard to tell.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the relevance is for Dennis is that okay. So you have all these thoughts about a coffee, so it dredges it up because that's what it used to do. So the idea of having coffee, and then somewhere along the line, coffee happens, and the mind goes, see, I did that. I told you to have a coffee, and in actual fact, there's no connection at all between the mind talking about coffee and when coffee happens. They're just correlated, not causated. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just funny how it kind of tries to flip through like the 3 or 4 remaining scenarios in which can make me kind of move. And it's not much, but it's just kind of funny. It just goes and goes and goes.
good stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Kind of funny, really, I guess.
Sounds like you're in a really good place to me.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, that's another story, isn't it? Yeah.
I got totally pulled into Dennis's story about being in the prison, thinking that I had no freedom. It's something that's come up in the last couple of days, and it was starting to soften. But as I was listening, and as there was more and more silence, I could hear like my own stories of when I felt that way. And then at some point, it was there's no door. There's no door. And I thought, well, it feels like there's a door. There's just no door. And then it was part of me is like, oh shit. It's been like I've been right there by the door for so long. It's like there's no door.
Yeah. A classic analogy is you bring a new dog home and they suggest that you bring it in it's like a cage, a wire carry cage kind of thing, and the dog sleeps in that every night and so on. And you watch, if that dog feels insecure for any reason, it'll run back into that cage, and it's like it feels fully protected, even though it's just a few strands of wire, metal. There's nothing really tangible about it. It's not like it's closed in and they can't see outside or anything, but it's in there. It feels secure. And we all carry that around with us until we recognize that it's not necessary. It's not, it's okay to use it, but it's not an imperative. So the more secure the dog or the less insecure the dog feels, the less time it needs to spend in there.
Yeah, there's a sense that if there's no door, then there's no excuses anymore
Hmm.
to say I can't do this or that. And then for me it's then I need to know what I want, what my needs are. And then if I don't know what that is,
Hmm. So I had this really weird image. It's like an artificial intelligence produced image of all these people in society with this wire cage around their head, just walking around, and they've all got it's from their shoulders up, this wire cage around their head, and it makes them feel secure and happy.
oh,
Yeah. And then we go from that to the one where the door is not there, or even the door is open, and then the door is not there, and then eventually maybe there's no wire cage around the head, or it gets less and less tangible.
Or you just look at the wire cage and realize there's no head.
I like that. Yeah.
that's good.
Or maybe when you're looking for the door, you realize there's not even walls.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is to consider that it can be seen as a prison kind of holding us in, we're trapped, or seen as a place of security, a welcome safety thing. And yet it's the same. And maybe that's a transitional thing too. Maybe it starts out as a safety thing. Maybe it then becomes a prison, and then it goes back to being a safety thing and before it goes away. Who knows?
Maybe the question is, do you want to be free?
Mm. That's a really interesting one, that one, isn't it? I guess if you do want to, then it must imply that you think it's possible. But is freedom actually something?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
There's no door.
Do you even have a choice once you open Pandora's box? I feel like I don't even know. I feel like this whole lifetime has been a process of where I'm at now, where it seemed like choice, obviously, but then really no choice. It just life just keeps shaking you harder and harder until you actually like, oh, shit, you know? Because I had all those signs, but I was just like, no, I'll do it my way, drink, 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 and not know. I don't know. There's not in hindsight, you can look back and just see like, oh, no wonder why I had to get rattled. It kept getting more intense, but it's like didn't have to, but it will one way or another. I feel like life just shows you and you get to that breaking point,
Yeah, yeah,
the classic there has to be another way, or like what, this is all shit, there's no way. I mean, I remember as a kid having those thoughts like,
yeah,
just all through my growth period, and I didn't, I had never had any. I thought there was something wrong with me, which is I think everyone has said, when I didn't have, everybody knew what they wanted to do with their life, and I'm like, oh shit, I had no clue. And I still, and I did all these things, and it's like, made all these identities to try to get through. And if I would have just said, well, I mean, who knows, would have, could have, should have, you can't do that. But it's all lined up perfectly, really, when I thought it was like, shit, I'm like, oh God, thank goodness I didn't go to university and learned all this stuff that, I mean, I don't know.
yep,
I
yep,
don't know. I think because I was just trying to feel better in life, self-help stuff. I was just trying to feel better. And damn it, look at now, and suddenly I got into non-dual accidentally, but it's not accidentally, I feel like it's all like, this is it. And it's like, oh, okay. So now I'm just learning what appears to be learning, to, I don't have to suffer for the suffering. Now I could feel it and realize like, oh, I can feel this. I mean, good thing I had a lot of emotion coming up, a lot of things that where I was able to, I never held anything in. I was like one of those people that wore their emotions on their sleeves, anger, crying, and whatever, and feeling sad, depressed. But now at least I'm like, oh, I'm allowed, like I could realize now that all these sensations that I feel in my chest, the burning and all this stuff, it's the same for excitement, it's the same for anger, it's all the same. So if I just like the thoughts, if I just don't listen to the thoughts, I can sit in it. So far, I can sit in
Beautiful.
it.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I had a realization once that, you know, a lifetime of suffering, I suppose you might say, was it had to happen the way it happened for me to be here now. It's like when you were talking, I suddenly realized, you know what? If life has put you on this path, this whatever you want to call it, path of waking up, the moment that you recognize that you're on the path, you could just totally let go and go, this is it. I don't need to control anything. I can just not even, not even keep walking. I don't have to do walking. I just, here I am on this path and that's it. Life has done it. If I'm on the begin, if I've got one foot on the path, I can totally let go because it's inevitable. What will happen will happen. Can't not.
Yeah.
And none of it was in my control. I mean, I thought I was doing stuff, but I wasn't. It was life that put it in front of me, and it was life that just allowed it to happen.
I mean, that's true because no one really is going to pick up something that says you're not here. Never were. This is all a dream. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to hear that earlier in my life. I would have flipped shit if I would have heard that. I would have or not believed it. I'm like, this is stupid. Maybe. But so it's timing is timing and whatever, even though there's no time, blah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So
They just
any
also,
idea of something left to do is totally crazy. Yet, yeah, that seems to be what what imprisons us. The idea that we've got a choice, that we can control, that we've got something to do. When in fact, it's totally ridiculous when you look back on it from here. It's just Jesus. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. The most laughable thing is that I knew what I was doing.
yeah, to me, I just feel like I'm just completely losing control. It's like I can't stop this train. It's just, even, if I sit here and I try to not listen, it's something's picked up and then I'm off again.
Yeah.
Where all those little spaceships going into the mothership, we're just all being like slowly moving to the dock, you know?
It's that I feel like it's that sense of needing to know that leads us to finally know that we don't know, and then we're free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird thing is, the paradox is that seems like what drives us is this uncertainty that creates fear, and then we arrive at not knowing anything, yet there's no uncertainty there. There's no certainty either, but there's no uncertainty.
Yeah.
So it's a total paradox. How can we be happy knowing nothing and yet there's nothing uncertain? I just want to laugh.
Yeah, what Marius just said about to know that you don't know that, and then you're free. It sounds so simple in a way, But it's really true. Whenever I try to understand something, I just fall flat on my face. And it happens every time. Dropping that, thinking you need to know to be free.
Hmm.
Powerful. You've
But
just said it so so just came out of you. It's such a relief.
but
You could even go as far as to say that everything other than a total relaxation in not knowing is a coping mechanism. What are we trying to cope with? That's
Uncertainty.
craziness in that one, isn't there? Yes, absolutely. It's all based on uncertainty.
Trying to be something,
Yeah,
trying to be someone.
trying to be
That's the
certain
only tension.
about
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, give me any kind of certainty, and I'm happy.
But it doesn't work.
No, of course,
Certainty is a sense of believing in certainty just imprisons you.
absolutely. That is the wire cage around the head. That idea of certainty.
is knowing that you don't know still a knowing and an imprisonment?
Yeah, so there can be a subtle shift with that. So that whole concept of knowing, like it's the same thing as awareness. I had arguments with my chatbot about awareness and knowing about it, and it needs more education because it even though it says the words that knowing and awareness are not a thing, it still talks about them like they are a thing. So that whole idea of knowing, what is knowing? Is it just a really rough way of talking about a feeling or the lack of a feeling? Right? So when there's certainty, there's no feeling of certainty. There's only the feeling of uncertainty because that's a contraction, a constriction. But when there's a feeling of certainty, it's actually that's a non-issue. There's no uncertainty, and that's it. It's an absence of uncertainty. No such thing as certainty, because certainty is an idea that's the same as uncertainty. It's about something, and when there is no uncertainty, it just becomes a non-issue. We don't bring into being something called certainty.
But Dennis, I don't know if that is what you meant, but what came up here when you asked that question is somewhat of a important point, and that is we can fall into the like a strong standpoint of not knowing. We don't know anything. Like it's the opposite of I know, but
It's
it's
the
not
same.
really there. Yeah, it's it's kind of in the middle of that where there's not really a holding on to not knowing and a holding on to knowing. They cancel each other
Yeah,
out.
yeah. A certain a not knowing, it's like it's its own certainty, which is the same as knowing.
Exactly.
So it's somewhere in the middle.
I always put it in terms of, and I never realised this until this conversation, not needing to know.
Needing.
Yeah, it's that needing is the relationship to it.
Mm.
Surrender.
Yeah. Not needing to know is what I was saying. It's my experience.
Not even having any interest in it, not even needing is going too far. Even
Needing is, yeah, that's right.
not even desiring, not even not even thinking about it.
Do you know, I was listening to somehow since 4 days ago when Aji Shanti came on a talk with Tammy on Sounds True. He did an interview recently just out of nowhere. He's got long hair. He looks crazy. But for some reason I'm listening to him again, but it's different this time.
Yeah,
Because it's like I used to listen to him like he was this all-knowing, magical, saying things that were just profound. And now I'm listening to him and it's kind of I'm hearing him differently. It's like I can relate to more. I can relate more to what he's saying. It's less abstract and mystical and guru-y and more.
human.
He's just talking normal shite. He just has a more booming voice and charismatic. He's charismatic in his own way and attracts a sort of a bigger crowd with it. But there's nothing, more special in the words than maybe the words here. So I made him into something he wasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting, that one. Before waking up, I had a library of books, and amongst those books was some Jiddu Krishnamurti stuff. And every time I read them, I was just like incomprehensible words that he was uttering. And then after waking up, I knew exactly what he was talking about, but it was as boring as shit. I could not read. He was, he was saying like things like, "It's daylight." Well, of course it's daylight.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I've tried to read his stuff again, and he was the first person I ever found with a spiritual thing. And I just devoured his meetings with Dr. Alan Anderson or something back in the 70s, 80s. It was like 12 hours of 1 hour videos, conversations with Krishnamurti. And I was fascinated by it. And yeah, it was magical. And now it's like, it's hard to read.
Yeah.
But that is significant, Dennis. I mean, well, for me anyways, it's a sign that you're kind of, not even kind of, that you are awake.
It was one time for a tree in America, and I had this idea about him. So I wanted to see him after a meditation. So I missed one and I stayed outside. And then he wasn't there. He hadn't come past. And of course, I had it in my head, this fella can shapeshift and just go invisible. That's how I thought about things back then. Uh,
Well, we all did. We all
Yeah.
expected these kind of cities to turn up and become. We could walk on water or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, well, I
Only
suppose
I'm awake,
Ramdas
I can
wasn't.
do that. Yes.
Ramdas wasn't any help when he used to talk about Neem Curly Baba disappearing and appearing everywhere. Like he was kind of colluding with those types of cities. Oh, yeah.
Well, you know what they say. There's an interesting one. They say, magic is simply stuff that science hasn't caught up with, and
Yeah.
you know, definitely don't want to exclude magic. There's plenty of magic in the world, uh, but it's not unscientific. Yeah, yeah.
It's all mental.
Mm.
stories all the way down.
Can knowing ever be anything more than a momentary phenomenon?
No, it has to be refreshed, doesn't it?
People speak of it in the classical sense of knowing future or knowing past, but in direct experience, if there is only the moment, then knowing, if it exists, can only exist in the moment. So it would have to be, and if non-duality is true, knowing would have to be inherent in the known, which is kind of difficult to wrap your mind around, but just kind of redefining knowing here to the non-dual aspect,
Hmm.
taking it out of the usual context and see if it exists as a momentary phenomena.
And you have to be careful not to fall into knowing that you know. So is there knowing without knowing that you know? Because the moment you know that you know, you're off into
You don't know.
something else. That's right.
Yeah, but if there is no you,
That's right.
there's just knowing.
It's
To
just
keep
known.
it strictly in the context of non-duality, if there is no you, it can only be knowing and it can only be a phenomenon of this moment. So knowing that you know is really an impossibility in a way in non-duality.
That's right. You've got to step out of that in order to know that you know. Yeah.
To know that you
You could
know is a
only,
thought.
yeah, you could only know that you know that's a story,
Yes.
right? It's a thought,
Yep.
a short story, thought. Kind of redefines it for me.
I
It's the
missed
same
Sid
thing
Murray.
as awareness,
Yes.
awareness of awareness, so to speak. It's just a thought of being aware after the fact.
Right.
But it's a journey. It's, you know, and it's a process, if you like, to go from not being awake to being awake is like it's a circular thing. So we start off with realizing how the mind imprisons us, then reach the point where the mind's irrelevant, and then reach the point after that where the mind becomes the creator of everything we imagine is real. So we go round, you know, is it a spiral or circular or however it is? But, you know, yeah, so we start off with all thoughts of bullshit, get to where we experience life without thoughts, as in direct experience, momentarily perhaps, and then get back to realizing that uh, what we take to be real is a thought creation. And further than that is something I don't know about yet. Yeah. How are you traveling, Michelle? Is this stuff making sense for you?
Too much figuring out in the one thing that came with what Paul was saying was, how can there be a knowing who would be if there's no person to know? What would be a knowing if there's not a person to know? I mean, I'm not at any of those stages yet. I've been trying to focus on the conversation when realizing that I knew I didn't have my camera off, but I didn't know that I didn't have the mute on, and I was running around doing things. So I'm recognizing how, which actually this came up in the last conversation too, of like mind obsessing about how I did something wrong and that I want to explain myself. So I was just noticing that, like, oh yeah, oh gosh, look at that coming up
Hmm.
again here of
Do you get the presumption in what you say that if there's knowing, there has to be somebody that knows? You get that you're presuming the existence of a connection.
oh yeah, I definitely when there's I don't remember if it was this talk or the one that I was listening to from the past. I have no experience of there not being a connection of things. Um, yeah, the conditioning still seems very strong in, well, and so does that there's still a me. I mean, the best I'm doing right now is a mantra of just saying it. I would say I believe it, but I don't necessarily have an experience of it, which would be I'm not, or how am I saying it? Not I'm not in control of this body. It's more like the mystery is in control of this body, the mystery is in control of life. Like I just keep saying that to
Yeah, that's a
um,
transitional thing too, right? So it's a good way to start to say, it's just as the non-dual perspective that you are awareness, you're not a person, your awareness is a transitional thing. So one thing I'd love to point out to you is that what you think is not there actually is there, just just you're just not seeing it yet. It's not like you're going to bring something into existence that doesn't yet exist. It's that you're going to uncover what actually does exist.
yeah, I mean I would say too that like it's at least not right now feeling like it feels like there's some like seeking that has definitely gone away. I don't really feel so much that I am seeking.
Yep.
It feels more like I'm more in a place of like,
Discovery.
yeah, an openness of like, oh, what's gonna what am I gonna see next? You know, or what's gonna open up to me next, as opposed to like trying to search for it.
Yep,
Like I
yep.
am like Pernilla's fetters and stuff too, just because I find that really helpful. And what I think it was that Tammy mentioned too, like I love when she says, can I be in a body that, you know, experiences this and that? And that I find that, you know, kind of practice really helpful too. But yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of seeing what shows up and, you know,
As you were talking, tears came to my eyes, tears of joy and excitement. And do you appreciate that the fact that you no longer in this grasping, seeking state, that you're already also you've got a foot outside the prison door. You're all halfway there. You're on the move. You're going. You're there. It's really exciting for me to say that. Do you appreciate that's happening?
Oh yeah, because also like I'm having some tests done in a couple of days too, and normally I feel like I would just be extremely anxious about that and in my head and like projecting into what about this, what about that? And those come, but they're not
They won't bite.
sticking.
Mm.
Yeah, they're not sticking so much, or they're not sticking for very long. And so yeah, the relief of that and just the relief too of, I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned before either, I'd never had this underlying sense of okayness or like, I wouldn't say now either it's safety. Safety's not seeming as appropriate of a word. But just that like I'm finding more that it's feeling relieving to recognize that I'm really not in control. There's nothing I can do. I don't know if I'm doing. Um, so yeah, that's again, even though I've known that to be the truth in my head,
You're
like really
accepting it. Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
that like it's I wouldn't say it's like it's not cemented in or anything, but I don't know. I couldn't have made myself have those thoughts
No.
more often. Able to return to that. That's just becoming more natural. Yeah, this underlying sense of okayness is
Growing and spreading. Yes.
nothing like I've ever had before.
Beautiful. Yeah. How about you, Shafig? How's things going for you?
I didn't speak because I didn't want to kind of kill the vibe of being in peace. Uh, because as much as I can relate to um, experience of being in peace and everything okay, it seems that like the moment that I get to that level of like being peace and whatever is going on, life throws something again in my face that just comes up and shows that well, you think you figured things out, or not figuring things out in terms of like mind, but just like
Yep.
you thought that you you're okay with everything, and then just like you can just let go. How about this? And then I think then something comes up, and then see myself or a part or whatever comes up with this all this sensation, emotions, and this sense of I need to defend myself. This is wrong. I should do something. And then after that, immediately I sense the feel of judgment against that. Oh, you're better than that. You already seen that. You shouldn't do this. There is no doer. There is no like control. You should have let go or whatever, which I think this time for me was new. At least I noticed that sense of judgment. But then this feeling of the immediate kind of uh, path that was very kind of usual to take was to do something about this. And all right, finding things to figure out or even be with this. But at the same time, I think I know better than there is no there's nothing to do actually, and it brings up the sensation of frustration. At least that's how I label it.
Okay, yeah.
So you feel like you are in the, as they say, like you are in the tiger's mouth, and nothing to do.
Well, let's reframe some of that stuff. It's good stuff, but you're just seeing it from an angle that's not quite as productive as it could be, and that is that it's logical and reasonable, I think, when you're feeling that wonderful peace and calm, you're in a place that invites what's left, or some of what's left, to come up and get worked on. So when you're not, let's say when you're in that place of turmoil and there's a lot of stuff going on, well, you can only cope with so much stuff. So you're not going to deal with 5 things at once. Then you're going to deal with one thing, which is the most predominant thing, and then that's sorted out, and you kind of rest back into this sense of peace and calm and tranquility, contentment, and all of a sudden, guess what? Something else comes up, because there's room for it to come up, and there's space for you to work on it, to look at it. And once that's worked out, you'll go back to that calm, contented place, and then the next thing will turn up. And in the beginning, it seems like there's a constant flow of things coming up to work on, and you just get these short moments of peace and contentment in between. But they will get less and less as less and less is there to come up, and they'll get further apart and less intense, or maybe more intense too sometimes, because we don't have the filters. They can be really, really intense, but their duration is very short, and they get further and further apart. But that's not, excuse me, that's not predictable or constant or linear even. So there was a time when it would be 3 months between things turning up for me. But recently there's been several things in a week. And then they'll slow down again or get further apart. So there's no predictability about that. That depends on lots of things, of course. And when we say they come up to be worked on, that doesn't mean that we're actually going to work on them. They come up to be looked at, to be seen. That's all. And whatever happens will happen with that. But it's quite reasonable that it's not. People keep thinking, and I guess it's the way society has conditioned us, that they've lost something, that they've gone backwards. It's not the case. It's all a forward movement. You can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. It's just new stuff. It's old stuff showing itself in a new way, because you're in a position to be able to do something with it, even though you're not going to do anything, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Especially, I think, the part that even though there is a way to actually distract myself from it, or do something, or pull or push something, and it worked in a way before, the kind of, maybe the frustration part of me is that, like, it doesn't want to do that way anymore. It just leaves me with nothing to do.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And there was with the old way of doing something, there was a sense of satisfaction, or a sense of accomplishment.
Exactly. Achievement, doing something.
Yeah, achievement. Yeah. And the new way of just watching it means that that's not invited anymore.
I also want to point out, Shafiq, that it's painful to feel like we lost the peace because we're clinging to it, because we want that to be our permanent thing. But if we kind of lean into the fact of life not being like that, that life will always fluctuate, it's not as painful.
But why would anyone want this? Like if you tell it to a sane person, you're not getting peace out of this, but you just have to accept it's not peaceful. Why? And this is the question that I don't know. Why do I still want this?
But there is a certain peace even in fluctuation if you don't cling to the pleasurable sensations, or it's the fluctuations can be experienced without it being painful. So when you're asking why, it's from a standpoint of clinging. If we can come to the place of not clinging, where you're not trying to have a strong preference of it being one or the other way, it's just a flow.
Yeah, and I think this might be the kind of a root of the fear that sometimes I feel about losing control by I want to say accepting that I'm not in control, there is no one in control, and because by at least trying to or believing in control, there is something to do. There is some pull and push, even though 90% of the time it doesn't work, but still there is something that is doing something and feeling an agency rather than trusting or in a way having a faith to completely not doing anything or surrender.
So do you recognise what those things might be based on? A belief that they're based on?
Belief of protecting something or
Go
not being
go deeper
safe.
than that. Go down underneath that. That there is something to be protected.
Probably, yeah.
That protection can happen, and that there is actually something.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what happens as soon as you nod and say yes with that? Immediately other thoughts come up that say what?
The other thoughts are coming the same, but we know there is no one here.
Exactly. Yes. So those feelings are telling you about an illusion that exists. So don't focus on the feelings, focus on what they sit on top of. Always go underneath. So it's interesting that you know that there is no one there, yet there exists a belief that there is someone that needs protecting. So don't focus on protecting, focus on that there is someone there that needs. And when that belief is seen, it gets weakened. Maybe it won't fall away completely straight away, but it's certainly weakened because you know that there is no one there.
Yeah, intellectually, I know there is no one there, and I looked for it a lot, and I know there is no answer to it.
Yep.
But just the symptoms of it, like the protection or something to protect or save, tells me there is a still belief.
A belief, that's right. It doesn't mean that there is someone there. It just means that
Yeah,
there's
yeah, of course, yeah,
still a
yeah.
belief.
There is,
There is
yep.
someone there, yeah. But it's the fact that we bypass that belief. We don't acknowledge that belief, which allows it to remain in place. The moment we recognize that that belief is there, it gets weakened. And you'll find that's what these things that keep coming up. Every time you feel peace and something else comes up, it's that belief asking for validation again.
Mm.
Shafi, can you feel into thoughts having an inherent assumption of there being a me thinking them? Like it's a feeling of me in thoughts?
There is a feeling of, I want to say, ownership or have to pay attention to them in a way. But even the thought, I see them from distance, which is another thought. So I don't get the feeling that you're saying for the thoughts.
That feeling was in the ownership thing you mentioned. What does a feeling of ownership feel like? All right, here's another one. What's the different feeling towards your thoughts than towards some stranger in the street's thoughts? his thoughts are obviously just thoughts and we can dismiss them, but your thoughts, oh no, they're much more important, aren't they?
Yeah, because sometimes there is an action that needs to be done based on those thoughts.
Is the action based on those thoughts? You need to look at that. Or is the action based on something that came that triggered the thought? Did you say I'm going to eat breakfast? Or did a hunger pain generate that, trigger that? Did you say I'm going to go to the bathroom? Or did the feeling of a full bladder trigger that? Are your actions actually triggered by thoughts? Are they triggered by something other than thought?
Something other than thoughts.
When you're at a green light or a red light, or I don't know where you are, you get the go signal. Do you say, I gotta go? Or did you just automatically go because the signal happened? You need to look, when you think about control, look back exercise. What triggered the thought? Did this thought actually cause the action, or was it only correlated? It'll weaken it. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
And this is also important, but I was talking about something a little bit different. So the narrative that goes on in the form of thoughts, if you look really close, there is a assumption that it's like an inherent feeling of someone owning the thoughts, or or a sense of me, I'm here in those thoughts, because it's so familiar, that sensation that is in those thoughts, that it's not really in those thoughts, but it feels like it, that we just assume that it's a me, I'm here. But that sensation is just a sensation that we've assumed as a center, which is upheld by a constant narrative going on. So if we pay attention to thought, and if we fixate on thought, we're kind of keeping the sense of self alive. Which is why I always invite people I guide to kind of rest in stillness or presence, or direct experience as much as possible, because you create room, space between thoughts, and gradually see through that sense of self.
Definitely familiarity plays a role in giving truth to the thoughts. And the story of these thoughts in the past, they did something, they protected me, or they saved me, or um, they caused this good thing to happen or prevented this bad thing to happen. Which obviously, as Paul mentioned, because, well, there was a story and no one looked actually what caused those actions to happen. But this sense of familiarity and this narrative, this story associated with it, makes the thoughts to like this sense of ownership and doing something about them, and just they are useful, they are meaningful, and need to pay attention to them.
Can a thought pay attention to another thought?
No, but there is a sense of attention happens. Who's paying attention to these thoughts? Or it feels like paying attention to thoughts.
So there's just a knowing of a thought being present.
Yes.
Does the thought know anything?
No. It knows about itself.
A thought knows about itself?
Well, there is a narration happening. It just tells something.
So there is a knowing of a series of thoughts.
Yeah.
Does any one thought know of another thought?
No.
Can a thought think?
No.
So there is a knowing of a thought and the same knowing of another thought,
Hmm.
but no thoughts are thinking.
Yes.
Are you your thoughts?
No.
Then what are you?
I can't talk about this. I can't. If I talk, it's just another thought.
Uh-huh. So what are you?
I can say just this color and sound, but it's not me even. Like it's nothing personal about this. I can't say anything.
Good.
Does it feel celebratory, or is it excruciating? This inability to express, or not
It's
knowing, not having a conclusion. Is it good or is it painful?
no, it's good. It's freeing.
Yep. Dennis was smiling too at that one. Yeah. It is freeing. That's absolutely, that's really significant. That freeing feeling, that lack of constraint, that lack of definition is beautiful. And whatever arises in that is also beautiful, even if it's painful.
It was beautiful how Paul just took you to straight into not knowing.
When they're speechless, it's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Is there some way of noticing, like I understand the examples you gave, Paul, of like needing to go to the bathroom or needing to eat. But like I noticed today, I needed to go out to the studio to get ready for a class of people that were coming. And so it felt like that if the thought came, I need to go outside and get ready for the class for the people coming.
The need preceded the thought.
The need,
Preceded the thought.
the need preceded the thought.
The need caused what happened, not the thought.
Oh,
We assume the thought is first, and that causes the response. But what if the response is to something else? Some knowing said it's time, and then the thought turned up.
Right.
That's much more likely to be the case.
okay.
Of course, when the thought turns up, it says, I did it. I'm telling you this.
Yeah.
They're just the words or the form that the thought takes.
And even if it was the thought, you don't have any control of that thought coming when that thought comes.
And you could have a different thought. I don't want to prepare. Oh, I couldn't be arsed doing this today. And you still find yourself preparing.
Did a thought turn up to say, I need to move my fingers and stroke the cat? Or was that happening? And if a thought turns up that says, I'm stroking the cat, does that thought claim that that's the reason you're doing it?
Yeah, it does. It does try to claim.
But it's obviously not true. You were stroking the cat way before the thought turned up, and you would, and if we weren't talking about it, the thought may have never turned up.
Yeah. There is definitely though like a um like what Shafi mentioned too, like a an ownership, like the thoughts are happening to me. The thoughts.
And my thoughts are more valuable than somebody else's thoughts. My thoughts have meaning. Well, that's just the colour of a thought.
Mhm.
What do you think, Bianca?
For me, a thought is the same as someone asking me. Like you ask a question and it triggers answer. Or if my husband says, take the trash out, and I take the trash out. Or I can have a thought, oh, I need to take trash out. And it triggers this. It's mine voice or someone else's voice.
Do you always believe what the voice says?
That's forever. If I can do it, then why not? If I can't, then I can't.
What decides if you can't?
I don't know. If it's not done, it's not done.
Your laugh is contagious, Shafiq.
It's so absurd. Oh. The whole question Paul asked me got me to a place, and then you asked Bianca, what to decide? You can or you can't. That was just like, what the hell? So much torture.
And I just love the juxtaposition of Bianca's deadpan, factual statement, it's done or it's not done. Just just was just absolutely brilliant. I loved it. Yeah.
You can't really argue with that.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know. It just seems very simple.
Yeah, it is.
But this mind here came up with about 5 different scenarios to complicate it. One of them was like, well, if I'm in the middle of something and my wife asked me to take the trash out, and I go, no, I need to finish what I'm doing first. Really complicating such a simple thing. It's either done or it's not done. It's either done now or it's done later. It's just done or not. Yeah. Yeah. And that laughter, Shafiq, is what happens when beliefs get changed. Okay, I'm gonna pull the plug in a few minutes. I've got to go to town and get this taken off, so I'll just give you a bit of advance warning. So yeah, a few more minutes.
I checked back over in Unleashed, and Terry Farrar put that research thing up on at the end, close to the end of January, and it's not restricted to any particular background. If you're awake,
Okay,
you just go, you click the link, and there's a little questionnaire to fill out and stuff.
is that
He's a
in
nice guy. It was a fun conversation.
is that in Unleashed or Guide Central?
On It's in Unleashed.
Yeah, okay, I'll go look. Yeah, great.
She posted it. I think it's January 24th. Terry put it up.
Okay,
So
yeah.
go check it out.
I think there's value to the world in supporting that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I told him about that last uh the woman, the journalist who did the survey uh quite a while back, probably a few years back. I posted that survey and her paper published over in the files section of the guiding section, I think. And I told Jacob about that. He said, I'm pretty sure I read that study. So he's been doing a lot of background work on this. He asked very informed questions. I'll say it like that.
Yeah, I'm always interested whether somebody conducting a study like that is already quote awake, or not.
You know, I was looking for that in the conversation, and there are things he said that I almost had the urge to say, "You're awake," or "You sound like you are awake," but I didn't want to tarnish
Hmm.
his research objective point of view, I guess. But yeah, he's at least very well informed.
Okay. I don't know if it means anything, but I've seen 4 of you guys today with cats. Yeah,
You mean 4 cats with people?
yeah, yeah. Mm. All right, I'll go now. See you all later. Very good.
Oh, like.
Bye bye.